You are listening to MadEarth Podcast, a broadcast that will bring anything connected from the land. Brought to you by Pirate Studio. All right, so good evening, everyone. Once again, this is Jari Alidad and your host for tonight for our 11th episode of Mad Earth Podcast. And tonight, we get I we get here a friend who's currently located in Florida. This is a good friend of mine, a comrade. So I would like to introduce Jimmy. Hey, Jimmy, are you there?
Yeah, hey everybody. This is Jimmy with Mutual Aid Disaster Relief.
Thank you so much for coming and for putting your time here, Jimmy. I know you're too busy. I know you're doing a lot of actions on the ground, but still, thank you so much. I'm really so thankful that you put some time for this podcast, and I am really excited to discuss and to heard a lot a lot of perspective coming from your end about the topic that we have today tonight. Okay, or this morning on your end, and that is mutual aid disaster relief. But before we go on that topic, Jimmy, would you mind if you introduce yourself, and that way, our audience can have some idea about you?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Jimmy Dunson, and I've been passionate about mutual aid survival programs for a long time. I got started with my local Food Not Bombs, and then responded to a call for solidarity from Malik Rahim, a former Black Panther in New Orleans after Katrina, and went there for several months, and then later on helped with other solidarity-based disaster relief mobilizations, and have been doing that, more and more as recently as those disasters have increased in intensity and frequency, and probably will so even more in the near future.
Okay, thank you so much for that introduction. You said you become part of the mutual aid disaster relief, and it has a survival program. So can you tell us, what is mutual aid disaster relief, and what is the survival program behind this, collective or group?
Sure. Mutual Aid Disaster Relief is a people-powered disaster relief network based on the principles of solidarity, mutual aid, and autonomous direct action. Um, we act as kind of a Swiss Army knife for the larger movement of mutual aid and uh, liberatory disaster response. So we have a number of different survival programs. We have our Feed the People program. We have a supplies distribution program. We help with solar infrastructure. Um, we help with rebuilding, like tarping roofs or cleaning up flooded homes, different things like that. We're trying as much as possible to not come empty-handed. Have something to offer, whether it's wellness checks or Gatorade or something to give, to break the ice and begin building relationships, and then from that, do a powerful and radical but simple act: listen and ask what folks need, and then respond to whatever their needs may be.
Impressive. Thank you so much for that, Jimmy. So you said, if I heard it right, you said mutual aid disaster relief is based on the principle of solidarity, autonomy, and direct actions. Is that right?
Yeah, I said solidarity, mutual aid, and autonomous direct action. Yeah.
Okay, but what do you mean by that? Can you elaborate the idea of solidarity and autonomy and direct actions?
Sure. So solidarity differs a lot from charity in that it's relationship based. It addresses root causes. It's with charity, there's it's top down, it's patronizing. There's a sharp line, dividing line between so-called givers of aid and so-called receivers of aid. There's a power imbalance there, and with solidarity, we seek to dismantle that power imbalance and come together as equals, giving what we can, everybody giving what we can, and receiving what we need too. It's about sharing resources, but it's also about sharing power. So that we do come together as equals collaboratively to address our own and each other's needs. And it's also, we're talking about addressing root causes, and it's not just putting a band-aid on a problem. It's addressing people's immediate survival needs, but building for long-term structural institutional changes as well. So one of the elements of this is a willingness to do direct action. So whether that be, uh, you know, um, liberating supplies that are sitting in warehouses, collecting dust, and getting those out to the people who those supplies are supposed to be in the hands of, or whether it's resisting illegal housing evictions after a hurricane, or taking over unused buildings and using them as points of community, so that folks can collectively collaboratively rebuild together. Those are all examples of utilizing our movements with our long history of challenging the state, and doing what needs to be done with regards to um, you know protesting and resistance and things like that. There we can even be more direct when it comes to disaster response and the activities that are possible in that situation, to help people immediately survive in crisis, and then contribute to their self-determination, in that space and beyond.
Oh wow, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for explaining that, Jimmy. I'm really excited to see, the actual action you're doing there, guys. But one thing that I'm thinking right now is you said this action is a relationship based action, right?
Mm,
And I think that's really important, to have a horizontal relationship. And you said mutual aid is not something like charity. And for me, I
mm,
think because for the perspective of charity, you're giving because you have extra, you have
mm,
something, you have extra, and you have a lot of things that you can share to other people. But for the idea of mutual aid, you're doing this because it is important to practice a culture of sharing, and sharing is
mm,
something natural. So at the same time, you said you're doing this because you're addressing the people's basic needs. And but you also said, but it should not be take as a band-aid. But my take is on what you said. You're also using this, this scenario, or this, disasters, to show people that there's something wrong with the system. And mutual
mm.
cooperation is something really important. Mutual cooperation is one of the best ingredients to have a sustainable community. What can you say about that, Jimmy?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also, even if folks don't call it mutual aid, spontaneously, especially during and after crises and disasters, people spontaneously revert back, to relationships based on mutual aid. People come out of their houses and meet each other for the first time and take care of each other. And it's not a question of whether or not people will engage in spontaneous manifestations of mutual aid. following a hurricane, a fire, an
Mhm.
earthquake, tornado, or other disaster, a pandemic. The question is, are when people uh, engage in those spontaneous manifestations of mutual aid, are they going to be backed up and supported by more established um, networks or organizations, or are they going to be subverted by them? Because that's what we see time and time again after disasters. um, is there is a flowering of neighbor to neighbor, peer to peer, mutual aid that is really beautiful, but then oftentimes you know it's subverted by those with more access to power, more access to resources, and then quickly people become, go from being agents of the recovery process and to near like recipients in a line at a Red Cross table, and so what one thing that mutual aid disaster relief does is we work with community members, especially their most marginalized members, and leverage our resources, our skills, our connections, our networks, our whatever we have to support people's own recovery, so that they can lead their own recovery. And we try to find the people on the ground, in their own communities who are impacted by the disaster, but are also assisting their neighbors, and different things like that. And we try to leverage whatever doors are open to us are open to them as well, and so we're trying to we know that this network and this movement is bigger than us, so especially since the pandemic, the coronavirus, there's been an explosion of mutual aid groups everywhere. And so another aspect of what we do is supporting, these, beautiful flowerings of mutual aid. So, leveraging, our resources and the doors, again, the doors that are open to us, to other mutual aid collectives that are doing the work that we're trying to do as well.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Jimmy, for explaining that again. So let's talk about the idea of self-determination, because I do believe
Mhm.
self-determination is really something connected to the idea of mutual aid. And
Yeah.
I do believe you're doing this thing because you have the determination to yourself, to do this type of action. So what do you think is the importance of having self-determination? What do you think is what do you think is the importance of an individual having the idea of self-determination, especially in time of disaster?
Mhm. Um, yeah, the Zapatistas have this slogan, Mandar obedeciendo, lead by obeying. And I really like that idea, as a movement, as a network, we really encourage autonomous action, so we hope that everybody will be going out, listening to impacted individuals, and responding any way they can, and the network having their back, and it really works the best when people know that and act on that. It's we rely a lot on like the social movement and affinity group model of organizing, and um rather than paid staff and top down organizing, we really rely on people's the volunteers, the coordinators, the participants, acting on their self-determination to respond with dignity and respect and empathy to disaster survivors, and we rely on them listening and asking so that they can respect the agency and the self-determination of those impacted. um so rather than experts who tell people what is required and what is needed. Disaster survivors aren't looking for that. They're looking for allies and accomplices who can leverage access to resources or other support to support whatever disaster survivors say is the priority. And it differs every time. Sometimes it's food and water. Other times, it's cleanup help. Sometimes it's resisting a home eviction. Sometimes, it's and so being flexible and being responsive and adaptive to whatever the self-determined needs of impacted people are is really necessary and for effective and just disaster response.
Okay, great. So, Jimmy, I would like to ask you a question, if you don't mind. For how long you're doing this, this action?
Yeah. So mutual aid disaster relief in this incarnation has been around for about 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
I got my start in this type of organizing in 2005.
Okay, great. And I would like to ask you, where are you coming? What is your motivation? What is your politics behind this? This good action. If you don't mind, if you want to share that, I will be more happy, to know that.
Oh yeah. Um. So definitely these principles. There's a lot of um mention on our website of the core values and guiding principles. That they guide our work. I've been involved in movements, before this, like the global justice movement, anti-capitalist movement. I've been involved in food not bombs and different things like that. And so I believe that these storms and fires and disasters, they're other disasters, they're increasing in intensity and frequency exponentially. And we can't rely on the state to save us. We can't rely on the nonprofit industrial complex to save us. There's no cavalry coming. And as these disasters intensify, the needs will become even greater and greater. And we're it's a question of survival. I don't believe that when I was younger, I focused more on going to mobilizations against the G8 and the World Bank and different things like that. And whereas I still think that's valuable and that is needed, I believe that our political and economic structures around us are a house of cards, and that they will fall under their own weight. And I don't know when that will happen, but I do believe that will happen. And what I think our task is to when that happens, what will come after. It could be even worse, whatever comes after. But if we plant the seeds of mutual aid, cooperation, compassion, coming together to meet our own and each other's needs and build infrastructure and reimagine new social relationships, based on compassion and care and mutual respect, rather than profit or hierarchy, then that matters for whatever comes next. With regards to storms, both literal and figurative, that are even now forming on the horizon. The next pandemic, the next, collapse, the next economic crisis, the next, fire, tornado, or volcano, or
Mhm.
hurricane, or typhoon. So we know it's coming. We know, these storm clouds are gathering, and I believe that uh, that um, the political and economic and social structures we have now are not written in stone, and by planting these seeds, we we're spreading, one of the most powerful, things. Everything begins as an idea, and when people can come together to experience what it's like to live outside of the dictates of the market, and meet each other's needs, in real and lasting ways, and organize together, in powerful and beautiful ways. That experience lasts, and it doesn't go away from somebody who's had that experience, and people carry it with them, beyond that. And so, that's what I'm hoping for, is that, every time that we mobilize, every time that, we inspire, mutual aid, it'll just, you know plant further seeds, so that no matter what happens, we the people are taking care of each other.
Thank you so much for that, Jamie. It really make a lot of sense to me, and that's really something beautiful. But don't get me wrong, Jimmy. I just want to share that for me, on my own perspective, disaster is not something bad. It's disaster is something natural in the natural world. The tidal wave, the earthquake, the storm, the forest fire. I think this is something natural in the natural world. But because of the continuous destruction in the planet,
Mm-hmm.
and because of the continuous rape that's happening around the world, from our forests, the mountains, rivers, oceans, the fracking industry, the coal industry, the mining industry, the logging industry. These are the
Mm-hmm.
major reasons why every time we have some typhoons, or uh, those common people are badly affected. Those people
Mm-hmm.
who's in a poverty line. And I think the ecological crisis we're facing is something connected. For the main problem that we usually we're facing or experiencing every time there's a disaster. So what I want to ask you is, what is your perspective about the ecological crisis that's happening right now, and how do you address this issue connected to your action?
Yeah. So yeah. Another big aspect of, um our where we position ourselves is, um we recognize that, we need a complete shift in our, economy and society, for to have a just relationship with the earth. And um um there's um yeah, I believe that, uh it's the science is very clear, that, it's, human, activities, especially, um the industries of capitalism and fossil fuel extraction, that is, causing and worsening, these storms and these fires. And and like you said, there's, deforestation, there's wetlands loss, all these different things. um and and what we can't afford to do is wait and rely on legislation to be passed, to globally, or accords to be signed by world leaders. That's not going to solve the issue. What we can do here and now is do those activities, plant wetlands,
Mhm.
whatever we can do to restore our relationship with the earth, engage in bioremediation, and we can do this on a small scale with what we have, but that of course what we hope is that it will snowball and build, and inspire more people to act likewise, and it's it's we're getting to the point now where it's we need a vast shift in the way we are interacting with ourselves and the planet in order for us to continue life as we know it. And another component of this too is not just a transition, but a just transition. So when we're talking about um uh um you know uh uh averting climate chaos, who is impacted the most from these extreme disasters. It's poor people, it's indigenous people, it's Black people and people of color. And so address we don't just want to address people's immediate needs related to a flood or a hurricane. We also want to meet those underlying injustices and address and resist those at the same time. So at the same time that um we're supporting people in Puerto Rico with solar infrastructure and solar energy, so that there's more autonomy, more resilience for when the next disaster hits the island. Also, at the same time, we're connecting with our indigenous friends in South Dakota, and working on infrastructure there, because both with regards to like heating and power, there it's not a hurricane that did that. It's the legacy of colonialism, that
Mhm.
is the most poignant ongoing disaster in that area. And if we're serious about our addressing people's needs, it's got to be holistic, and we got to take into account social and economic and racial and gender and other inequalities and injustice that existed previously to a hurricane or a fire or a flood, and address those, so that we do build back more justly, and really we want to achieve that better world that we know is possible.
I must agree. I must agree. Thank you so much for answering that question, Jimmy, and for sharing your perspective again. So, okay. Um, you said earlier that the mutual aid disaster relief network has been, and I can see here, by the way, I can see from the very start of the COVID-19 crisis that this network, our network, has been working a lot, on the grounds. So, would you like to to share some some actions that you're doing since from the very beginning, and how the network responds and do action, especially on the first quarter of COVID-19?
Yeah. So it definitely, different people have different experiences. For me, I was part of some a crew of us who reached out to a lot of local mutual aid groups that popped up everywhere, and fostered communication with a lot of them, and then we sent out care packages, with some immune support items and a love letter, and different like hand sanitizer, different things, and um, zines. And so we sent folks care packages, and then followed up with other ways of supporting these this extended family that's what we consider our extended family, of these local mutual aid groups, sometimes neighborhood level, sometimes block level, sometimes city level, that have sprung up by the hundreds. And so we're also at the same time, we're also when we're able to, we address people's individual needs as well, and send them supplements or food or diapers or baby supplies, or help with other aspects that their folks are needing with directly. So it's especially since the pandemic, it's been twofold, um both addressing individuals' needs as they come to us, or as we come to them, who are impacted either directly from the coronavirus or economically because of it. And then also, especially since early March of 2020, we've been leveraging and backing up local mutual aid projects, and whatever resources we have at our disposal, we've been sharing it with them, making supply purchases, or getting donations of soap or hand sanitizer, or helping them access supplies, or uh, giving our sharing information, or different things like that. We put out a zine about safe food distribution during a pandemic. That was one of the first things we put out. We also put out a lessons learned zine in this over the summer, just highlighting some what we see as some of the important lessons, and also pitfalls of mutual aid, so that folks can learn from that. And one of the things we want to do is we want to help the movement avoid the mistakes, and build off the successes of previous initiatives of organizing in this way, and also provide some level of continuity for the movement. So even though a mutual aid project might come and go, we want to connect and learn and pass on the wisdom, and the lessons learned from that mobilization, so that whatever comes next, people can pick that up and learn from it. And we can have a constantly um you know um you know flourishing of best practices, and just learn from each other. It's we can always do better. We can always you know be it's um I think oftentimes there's a tendency to think that um you know um one isn't doing it right, or different things like that, that it's too small, different things like that. And we want to really encourage people to you know you know these questions are for walking, as the Zapatistas say, that we learn by doing, and it's okay to make mistakes and to learn from them. And it's okay to start small and then build from there, and we can all, even if all we have is, you know, a few, canned goods in our cupboard and a few, band-aids and, medic supplies, if we do the work to share and to set the space, to care for each other, those that small first aid station, can quickly become, a wellness center, once more and more people, come and bring their skills and their resources to the table. And so it can snowball really quickly to, meeting more and more needs, based on both the needs of people impacted and the skills and resources of of people who have something to share. And those aren't mutually exclusive groups. Oftentimes, people who are impacted by a disaster, they're not passive recipients of aid or empty vessels to be filled. They have a stake in the recovery process too. And actually, it's part of how we heal from traumatic and, crisis and disaster events, is to be part of a communal recovery and to be able to have a role and to share what we can. Even if I, lost, everything in my fridge, to, the power outage for the few days that Irma came, that doesn't mean, that I don't also have something to share, with my, like organizing supplies, or, helping carry boxes, or, some people can repair the vehicles, and people have a lot of skills that we need to utilize, everybody's passions and skills, so that we can, really, um, recover in a way that, is just and based on, everybody's participation.
Okay, so wow, thank you so much for that, Jimmy, and thank you. I really want to, acknowledge your works. Thank you so much for being you, for being genuine, on your local works there. Thank you so much for doing that, Jimmy. And speaking of the zine, I get Mutual Aid Disaster Relief Zine. So for the local networks here, again, if you want to grab your copy, you can go here on MySpace or just send me a message on on my FB page, so that way, we can talk more about how can you still grab a copy of the Mutual Aid Disaster Relief. So Jimmy, thank you so much again, for that zine. That's really something helpful. And then, okay,
Thanks.
what is the thing I want to say? I almost forgot, Jimmy. Okay, but I'm really so happy that all the things that you said, I can imagine, those those wonderful.
Well, another thing that I was going to mention, with regards to the pandemic, a lot of us, um, you know, we um, we wear different hats for different, things. So, I do devote a lot of my time to mutual aid disaster relief, but I'm also involved in our local Food Not Bombs, and we've been sharing, meals up to 5 times a week, since March, when other groups stopped, stop doing their meals, and a lot of folks, are involved in other, mutual aid projects, other movement, justice oriented networks and groups. And that's one of the beautiful aspects of this, is that, people, it is an all volunteer network, and people can come and go as they please, and people can, if something else is happening, people are often engaged in other movements or local mutual aid projects, and then, that, works seamlessly with, when a disaster happens, we connect with all of those other, networks and local mutual aid projects, and different, social networks that we have. And one of the things that we often do is, as soon as a disaster hits a location, is we ask our movement friends in that area, how are you doing? What's going on? How can we help?
Okay.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, in for folks who are involved in Black Lives Matter or Food Not Bombs or a local mutual aid project, it's that work is, we want people to continue and expand that work, and that is really the foundation for a robust disaster response when a disaster hits that area.
Okay, great. And yeah, Jimmy, I do, I saw, on the posters that sharing is caring, and I do believe mutual cooperation is one of the best, uh, tools or equipment that we can have so we can survive in this pandemic. And I do believe mutual cooperation is really something natural. We can see the idea of mutual cooperation even in the animal kingdom and even in the
Mhm.
plant kingdom. So I think, that is really something natural. But it just happened that the couple system, would like to grab, those that culture or that, practices. So I think through this action that you're doing right now, we're doing right now, the idea of, we're promoting the idea of mutual aid. I think this is one of the best way, to share and to show to people what is the importance of having or practicing the idea of a culture of sharing. And
Mhm.
I do believe through this way, this is also an effective way to show to people that there's something wrong not only in the political aspect but as a whole, as the system, that this system is something,
Mhm.
this is not sustainable. This system is dominating. This system is destructive to the natural world. So I think by doing this type of action, you know on that way we can directly show to people that we our discontentment for what we're seeing, but at the same time we have direct action, a direct response that is based on their needs. And I think that is the bloom of the network.
Mhm.
Okay, so at the same time
Yeah,
this. Mhm.
absolutely.
Go ahead, Jimmy. So what can you say about that?
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of examples about relate.
Hey, Jimmy. Jimmy, hello.
And
Uh,
I
I'm so sorry, Jimmy,
you know
but your lines get cut. Would you mind if you
the um oh, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
there we go. Okay, much better. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, we see many examples of mutuality and mutual aid across, species, across geographies and histories. Um, and there the the time period of human history with settler colonialism and capitalism and these other systems of domination and oppression blip compared to the time that humans have worked together in cooperation and mutual aid, and in it, it's our natural state. It's how we feel most alive, and meeting each other's needs and taking care of each other and showing compassion and care. And it's where we came from and it's where we're going. And it's going to take a lot of unlearning and a lot of struggle to get there, but that's the promised land. That's where we're going. And especially our indigenous friends, there's also been an explosion of indigenous mutual aid groups and projects that have sprung up in recent months as well. And they're building off of a legacy of you know mutual aid being the you know interwoven with the cultural fabric and of their nations, and um so there's the website Indigenous Mutual Aid, and I encourage folks to go to that to see all kinds of examples of decolonial takes on mutual aid and the great work that they're doing.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that, Jimmy. So, just for the record, because it sounds like from the very beginning that the network, the Mutual Aid Disaster Relief, is doing a lot of actions. This network is really something big. So, where do you get your funds? Are you a state-funded network or a corporate-funded network? Go ahead, Jimmy.
uh,
For the
no,
sake of our audience.
we're not state funded. We have different fundraisers. We have online fundraisers where people can donate. Most people donate, real small amounts. People can donate so that it's recurring monthly, or just one time. And then also people all the time, out of the blue, come to us and say, "Hey, I'm doing this, punk show. Oh, I'm doing this benefit album. Oh, I'm doing this, telethon or webathon. Different special events that people think of to do, and they just come to us and say, "Hey, we want the proceeds to go to mutual aid disaster relief. We love what you're doing." And so there's all kinds of ways to, if listeners have an idea of, ways, if they want to do a fundraiser, that's totally awesome. And, that's, a big way that, that we, get funding. I think our average donation is, around like 20 something dollars, um we're excuse me,
Okay, no worries.
we're people
Mhm.
powered, and yeah, um it's people like me and who are keeping this work going. And the big aspect of that is that we don't have CEOs, we don't have staff, we're an all volunteer network, and so that makes it so that there's little to no overhead, and all the funds can be spent on direct community assistance, and addressing people's immediate needs, and then building infrastructure and things like that.
I see. And I can see, Jimmy, what I can see is on that way, that is the bloom of the network, of our network, because on that way we can stay independent, and we can stay independent to critique any dominating forces, in this planet. So I think that is the advantage if you're not funded by any corporation or by the state, but you're just supported by those common people who appreciate your action. And I think on that way we can, that is a two-way, because on that way we can see that they are cooperating, to continue the work of our network. What can you say about that, Jimmy?
And yeah, and then when you know one way that the nonprofit industrial complex works is that the funds slowly change the mission of the organization, and draw it away from what the survivor needs into what the funder needs, and what we've actually found in doing this work is that in being totally accountable to disaster survivors and creating our programs based on their self-determined needs, there are people out there who want to support that financially
Well said, well said. And
with no strings attached.
mhm, that's that is the beauty, of what we're doing, and that is the beauty of the principle that we're practicing in this network. So, Jimmy, by the way, I really want to talk more about you, but still, since we have limited time, so I would like to ask you a few questions before we end this, episode. Are you good with
Sure.
that? All right. So first,
Yeah, of course.
what are the things that you want to say, or the message to all mutual aid networks in you know in the network? What is your message for them?
Um, um, oh, um, um,
Take your time.
doing, the um, yeah, now is the time to plant seeds, and, um, there's, um, there's no shortage of work to be done, you know,
Hey, Jimmy, I think you're coming in and out again.
we
Your lines
bring
get cut.
different things to the table. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think it's the connection. Can you hear me?
There we go. Okay, much better. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So I think if folks can just if folks could continue the work that they're doing, that's we believe that community organizing is the best preparation for disaster response. And and similarly, disaster response is a form of community organizing. And the our movements, they take these networks, they take different forms, but they're all interconnected. And we whatever we're doing, we can do it to the nth degree, but also at the same time, um, integrate community care and healing justice into all aspects of what we're doing, so that we are able to do it for the long haul. Because we're talking about not just days or weeks or months. We're talking about years and generations of doing this work. And so being able to mitigate the trauma, and then heal, from the world that we're in right now, as we build the world to come. We taking care of ourselves and each other is a central part of this work. Healing justice and community care, they have to be integrated into all aspects of what we're doing, so that we can you know keep going for as long as we will need to.
Thank you for that.
and
Wonderful. Mhm.
and we
Go ahead.
can't wait for others to do what we know needs to be done, whether that's resisting the extractive industries, or engaging in mutual aid. We know what needs to be done, and we can't wait for others to we can't wait for the cavalry to come. We need to act here and now with whatever resources we have at our disposal.
Okay, so well, Jimmy, thank you so much for that wonderful message, and of course, Jimmy, um, how people can support your work there? How can they simply
Mhm.
support, the Mutual Aid Disaster Relief Network, particularly your local works on your community?
Yeah. So people can get involved. We have a website, mutualaiddisasterrelief.org. We're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. People can donate, at mutualaiddisasterrelief.org/donate. We have a list of, different ways to donate to mutual aid disaster relief. So other similarly aligned mutual aid around specific disasters and the pandemic. And then, also, engage, be involved in a local mutual aid project and reach out to us and see how we can collaborate and work together.
Okay, great. So, guys, for our audience, don't worry because I will put the Mutual Aid Disaster Relief website on the caption. So, in that way, if you want to support the Mutual Aid Disaster Relief Network, particularly Jimmy Works, you can contact them directly. And I'm encouraging you guys, to support this network because this network is doing a lot of things. They're doing a lot of groundworks and a lot of direct actions that help people directly. So once again, for all the audience, please support this network. And Jimmy, um, you said they can contact you on the website. Is that right?
Yeah,
is that the best way
yeah.
for them to contact you?
The website is a perfect way to contact mutual aid disaster relief or me. Also mutual aid disaster relief at gmail.com is an email address that we're using.
Okay, mutual aid disaster relief at gmail.com. I need you to send that email too at the end of this call. All right. And Jimmy, so before we end this this episode, I really want to talk to you more. I want to discuss more of things to you about mutual aid, but since we're limited, so this will be my last. This is not a question, but what message do you want to put at the end of this episode? For the common people.
So there's an anti-fascist revolutionary during the Spanish Civil War, Buenaventura Durruti, who said that our opposition might blast and ruin its world before it exits the stage of history, but we're not in the least afraid of ruins because we carry a new world here in our hearts, and that world is growing every moment. And I think that's a perfect encapsulation of the mutual aid organizing that we're a part of, that regardless of the crises that capitalism and patriarchy and these other systems of domination and oppression wreak havoc around the world, and on the earth itself and on all of us, we can rebuild from the ruins a new world, and we carry that with us in our hearts.
Okay, that's wonderful. And I do believe a new world is possible. So, well, guys, that's it for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. So, once again, thank you so much, Jimmy, brother. Thank you so much for putting your time.
Thank you.
This is a wonderful discussion. And I am looking forward for more discussion on future.
You are listening to MadEarth Podcast, a broadcast that will bring anything connected from the land. Brought to you by Pirate Studio.